How's it going, everybody? Pete here at Spawn Fly Fish, and today we're going top water, still sticking with the crayfish theme just because once I get on a kick I stay on it until I'm done. And this is the next iteration of what we're doing with crayfish, so grab your stuff and let's tie some flies. Alrighty, in the vise today we've got the TP610 from Ahrex, and what you're looking for in a top water sort of crayfish hook, at least what I'm looking for, hook gap and overall strength. The TP610, really strong hook. There's a little bit more flex than what you'd associate with like a saltwater hook, but it's super strong, but this hook gap is key. I'm fishing this to a bunch of largemouth bass, and I want to make sure there's plenty of gap in there to get the job done, and this hook does what I want it to do. Let's get some thread started here. Got some Veevus 140 in fluorescent orange. So to begin this fly, we're going to keep a couple things in mind as we go. One being the weight, right? Because we don't want to tie a fly that's supposed to float over the weed beds and all of that, put a bunch of weight on it, and then we can't see it because it slowly starts to sink on our third cast and all that. So just keep that in mind. We are going to play with foam, which, love it or hate it, it does keep a fly on top. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is throw in some movement. And by movement, I'm talking mouth parts. And so we've got some Shaggy dub here in pheasant tail brown. And I'm just simply going to fold it over my thread, like so. Get a good pinch there with my offhand, bring it to the hook, and get that first wrap over. Then a second wrap, and now it's not going anywhere. I can even come in and grab these little loose fibers and move them out of the way. Now, a few wraps to get over the veil, if you will, that effectively is veiled on our thread, and you're cinched in. That stuff's going nowhere. All it's going to do is cause a lot of commotion and movement and really bring attention to your fly. And that's what we're trying to do. Alright, next step. We've got some easy shrimp eyes, size medium, color black. Can't go wrong with these guys. And all we're going to do is get them on here. You see this last partition where the plastic meets, and that's going to be our marker for how far it's going to be allowed to stick out. Nothing crazy. Sometimes you can let the material tell you where it's going to go. That's a nice little feature there. Alright, like so. And I'm just going to bring that thread back for the sake of keeping an even underbody, and you can see we're going to have a taper develop naturally for us by the progression of simply tying this fly the way we tie it. Alright, so now I want some longer antennae type feelers in there, and for that I'm going to switch over to some Bucktail, and I've already cut a small section out here, and this is the Rootbeer from Nature Spirit. And as far as how far you want these antennae to stick out, it's nothing crazy. We don't need a big chunk of fibers coming off. We just need a little bit. So we're looking at roughly a hook length there, maybe just a little less. And you can see the effect is going to be pretty realistic. So I'm going to just pinch that, get a couple wraps on top, and then tie it in all the way. One thing I do like to do is get my thumb in there and just flatten all those bucktail fibers out before I get all the way up. And so I get as much coverage as possible from those few fibers. Make the most out of a little versus throwing in extra material for no reason. Oh, one too many wraps there. There we go. Just spread it out, and there's our bucktail for some antennae and feelers and all that good stuff. Get tied back, and at this point I'll lift and cut this at an angle and make sure that that taper is maintained once again. Alright, nothing crazy so far. We're crushing through this little crayfish guy here. So next thing, we need some claws. So for the claws, I've got some Squirrel here from Nature Spirit, and this is their crayfish or crawdad orange. And what I'm looking for on the claws, a couple things. One, I don't need them super long. This is just an impression of a claw. The fish know what they're looking for. So I'm going, again, with the fur part maybe 1 hook length, but the key here is when you cut that strip, there's going to be a section where the hair goes over, and then if you cut it here and turned it around, your hair would go the wrong way. So make sure you just pay attention to that little detail. If the hair is all going that direction, your claw should go out in that direction. So I'll tie the one on your side first so you can get an idea here, and I'll even show you a little trick on how to keep those claws separated a little bit. That's one thing people really get into. They tie a great crayfish pattern, and then the claws, as soon as it gets wet, just come together. And to some extent, that's to be expected. But there are a couple little tricks you can do to keep them separated a little better. Alright, let me put this claw on my side. It's going to be a pretty nasty looking little crayfish. If you're into bass fishing, you know what crayfish do to these fish. They love them. Alright, looking pretty crayfishy already. So what do we have left here? We're going to have foam coming over the top, so we need some sort of rib. We need our foam, of course, and then we need our body material. So let's get our rib tied in. And this is something you all should have sitting around somewhere. It is tippet. And for this, I've got some 2X. 3X would work. I wouldn't go much smaller than that. And let's just get that tied into the front like so, right behind those claws. And then solidify all the way back down. And now what I need to do is come in and create my loop, because we are going to be spinning a loop today to fill in that body. Alright, come back up, and we're going to spin 3 times around our thread, bring that knot right back to the shank like so, come back once more with our thread, and now our loop cannot move either direction, and it's not going to come undone or opened up on us or any of that. Alright, so I'm just going to undo the 3 twists in my thread and set it off to the side for now. So for the most important part of this fly, foam, we're going to use 2 pieces, and they're both 2 millimeter. So when they're put together, that's going to give us 4 millimeters worth of foam. It's pretty significant. And what it's going to do is assure us that this fly stays on top, even after it's chewed on and you know, cast out 100 times in a row. Doesn't matter, still going to float. And as far as the finished effect here, you want that shell to come out like roughly so that these points line up with the end of the eyes. So you can see there how much I need to tie in on the back side to make that work. And if it's not exact, by all means, don't freak out. You can fix that later as long as you have a pair of scissors. And as far as the shape of this is just freehand. I kind of know what the shape of a crayfish should be, and it's nothing crazy. No pun intended. Alright, let's get those both tied in. As far as color today, I've got some Hareline 2 millimeter foam, and I'm using cinnamon and orange. And you can see that's going to beef up that back section a little. And now we've gone from a taper look to a little bit more of an even underbody, but that's fine. Alright, so let's see if we got this. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Alright, so now let's get some dubbing out. And for today, of course, we're using the new Spawn Simi Seal Cray to play. Stuff is deadly. I mean, some kind of good. The fish like it. I like it. Josh likes it. What else is there? Well, you guys probably should like it too. Hopefully that's the case. If you haven't fished it yet, I strongly suggest you get a pack. And got about a 4-inch ladder here. I'm just going to toss all that fluffy goodness. Nope, I'm not. Let me restack my ladder here. That was a pretty poor first attempt. Alright, trying it again. As you can see, this is a pretty healthy ladder. It's not super sparse. And again, there's a lot of coloration in this dubbing that I want to showcase, if you will, for these fish. A little fashion show for them. And so I'm not going super thin. I'm going to go pretty healthy on this this dubbing loop. Alright, get my main twister in there. Let's start spinning this bad boy. Be mindful of those claws and alarms that you forget you set. Alright, let's get this bad boy spun. I know you're all excited to see how to keep these claws separated a little bit, and I'm excited to show you, so bear with me as we spin this guy up. Just going to do a little bit of a comb out or brush out with the Swiss CDC brush, and we'll be ready to rock at that point. Alright, so here's our little brush. We're just going to comb out any excess fibers that are in there that we don't need. Also, any fibers that didn't quite get trapped in the loop and are just sitting on there loose. Well, they're going to come off as soon as you put that thing in the water. So why not get rid of them now and not have these little loose fibers giving away that you're maybe not throwing a real bug at them. Alright. Pretty good. Let's get her going. So, what I'm going to do, first wrap, instead of just going right over, I'm going to pull that claw back, take the first wrap in front of that claw, and come over to your side and grab this one. I do want to keep that rib out of the way as well. So I've got, in this one, the rib and your side of the claw, and now I've got my first wrap in there of my loop. And now all I have to do now make the second one behind it, and there's nothing that's going to happen to bring those claws completely together at this point. That one move and they stay separate. So let's finish wrapping our big old crayfish body here. Get that dubbing down, grab with both sides with your offhand, and just kind of coax those fibers to the back. And so wash, rinse, repeat all the way up the shank. Don't worry if it doesn't look gorgeous just yet, because we still have that brush handy, and we're gonna get in there and comb all that goodness out one more time. Filling in pretty well though. I do like this natural taper I've got sort of going right there. I'm gonna be greedy and I want all that Simi seal in there. If you don't know, spawn Simi seal flat out catches fish. You heard it here. Alright, so now I'm tying off that loop, a couple good thread wraps, pop that tool out. I'm going to bring that loop back over the body so that we get it tied down in two different ways. Now I can safely trim that out, like so. Brush time. Get in there, get that body all brushed out. And what we're trying to do here is I don't need all this top stuff, right? So if I simply part the top and go off to one side and then off to the other side, we're going to get the bulk of this spawn Simi seal here, this Cray to play, coming downward, and that's exactly what we're hoping to do. Alright, so when I pull this thread or the foam over, I'm going to get my thread in front of that foam, and now all I have to do is hold this down and use my tippet material here, my leader, as my rib. Alright, so be patient with these Simi seal fibers. We don't want to trap any that we don't have to. And there we go. There's our first one. Just be mindful of the foam. Right, there's a lot going on with your offhand here on this fly. Don't let that offhand feel like it's getting a vacation day. I'll make sure it stays involved. And simply going to work my way down the body now, continuing this sort of diligent work of making sure I'm not trapping a bunch of fibers on each wrap. Oh man, this is looking buggy. Mud buggy to be exact. Alright, and now at this point I've come up, I'm going to take one extra turn of my tippet material, and then I'm really going to cinch all this stuff down. Got a couple good thread wraps so it's not moving on me. I'm going to bring it back over itself and tie it down again, the same way you could tie a weed guard. And If you want, you could absolutely throw a weed guard in on this fly. I've not yet run into a situation where I really need it, and I'm fishing this pretty much over shallow weed beds that I want to slowly present, and then also in the middle of lily pads. Like you can just toss this thing wherever you need it. Alright, whip finish. That's one. Coming in for a second one just because this poor guy is going to get chewed on here in the next couple days. Like so. Cut that thread out. And let's throw some head cement in here. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Take a little bit of the trepidation out of tying some top water crayfish. And what I hope you're seeing is this is how you translate into tying topwater bait fish. If you can tie this, you can tie anything into a topwater version. Just a little thought and a little patience goes a long way. And there we have it, folks. Floating cray, deadly for bass. Trout will come up and smack this as well. So give them the opportunity. Get in here. After you run that rib, just get your bodkin into play and pick out some of those fibers until you are happy with your own fly. That's what we're doing here, catching a few fish and enjoying some time on the vise. Hope you guys liked this one. If you did, please hit like and subscribe, and we will see you all on the water.